Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is WeatherBrains episode number 631. This is the pre-show, the magical time where we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and occasionally say very outrageous things. My name is James, and we're going to start the show in about 10 minutes. And if nobody else shows up, then it's all me. The question is, can I talk without anybody else on the show for 90 minutes? Probably so, but I don't have to do that because Kim just showed up. Kim, good to see you again. It's been so long.
I know, right? It's good to see you too.
And you are home tonight. I like this. The comfort of your own home.
Yeah, agreed. Hang on just a second. Hold that thought. I'm going to hook up my headphones so I reduce the feedback. I'll be right back.
Okay, cool. I'm just sitting here talking to myself. So we got some people out this week. Brian Peters, I do believe, is on the Gulf Coast taking a little vacation, and he picked a marvelous time to do that. So Brian is out. Bill Murray is out. I think he said he's going to drive to Georgia for some reason. So he's gone, but I think most everybody else is in, including the lovely Aubrey Urbanowitz, who just joined us. We see her photo there. She is getting online in the weather office at WHSV Television.
And I'm basically just going to turn off my camera and turn it back on again.
Well, if you're going to do that, then I've got to play my song.
Have you tried turning it off and on again? Off and on again. Off and on again. Have you tried turning it off and on again? That normally does the trick.
There you go. See, you get tech tips on this show, too. So we share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, say outrageous things, and give tremendous tech tips, like turn it off and on again. And I think it's going to be a home show this week. I do believe it's just us. I think Rick Smith is going to join us. A lot of the federal folks have had the day off. I guess Kim had the day off. This is President's Day. We're doing this on the 19th of February. So for our federal employees, we're thankful that they ventured in here on their day off, their long weekend. You're there.
Yep, that's every single week. Turn it off, turn it back on again.
It looks great. The audio's great. Video's great. You just...
Yep.
What's weird, my little camera, I have one of these little Logitech cameras, and my other one just kind of died. And then, so I ordered one from Amazon for 50-something bucks, and then the other one started working again.
Of course it did.
Like, oh, come on, man. So, but at least this one has a clean screen, and it just feels better. So, so anyway, I've had my little bug here, but I think we're going to do a homegrown show. We got Rick is joining us, and maybe Kevin will join us. Rick, you're joining us on your day off. You, sir, are a trooper.
It's for the people out there.
You got that right. We do it for the people. It's for the children.
It's for the kids. It's for everybody.
You got some ice coming down the pike, don't you? You got any ice in Oklahoma City?
I hope not. But yeah, it looks that way. Probably tomorrow night, Wednesday, a little bit. But
all right, we'll talk about it in the show here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like ice.
No.
Yeah.
So, I guess you're not in a position to talk about this. And I've been so busy that the budget and I'm seeing 600 and something forecasters positions eliminated. Is that true?
I don't know where those numbers are coming from. I've seen different numbers. I've seen anywhere from over 100 to 200 and something and they keep getting bigger. So,
this is from the Weather Channel. The number they're throwing out is 248 forecasters.
Yeah, and that number actually comes from the report language, the budget coming out of the White House. It's their recommendation to Congress.
Yeah, we need to talk about that.
Kim can talk about it.
Yeah, I know that you can't. And
throw Kim under the bus.
I like it when Brian's, Brian's a retired guy, so he can talk about it. But yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Alliance a little bit if you want to, Kim.
Yeah, sure thing. I think it'd be fun to say a little bit, although, you and I had discussed having a show on it later when we do have the director in place and everything. So maybe we could make a brief mention of getting to hang out this weekend and at least highlight for folks what the Alliance could be.
Right. I think just an introduction is cool. Because I do, and again, I have not talked much about it publicly or privately, but I think we can talk about it a little more, and that we're moving along here and getting this thing about ready to launch. Goodness, what else is going on here?
Are we guestless tonight?
Yeah, this is it. The four of us, and if Kevin shows up.
Hey, that's all we need.
Nate. Yeah, but say if Kevin or Nate shows up, then we're good. And with Nate, he travels so much, never quite know. But we'll see if he can join us. But yeah, it's going to be look. These often turn out to be some of the best ones we've done. It's just us talking, and I would like to open up the thoughts on the spring tornado season. I don't like some of the stuff I see, but who knows? Aubrey, how have you been?
I've been good. Looking forward to 70s tomorrow. We're getting spoiled.
Yeah,
Had a lot of sleet over the weekend. Had like a half an inch of sleet on Saturday.
Wow. It's a lot.
It was a lot of sleet. Yeah.
Hey, Jane, I don't know if y'all can see, I'm sharing my screen. The Mesonet Mediagram for Norman is kind of crazy with the really warm all day. And then the front came through about 5 or so. And then we dropped down into we're close to the 40s, I guess. And now it's spiked back we're up to 65 now. So, only
somebody got the blow dryers and blew that front back the other way.
Yeah. Yep. My little home station has been measuring. I didn't get as long of a blip of the cold air. I'm just south of the Mesonet Tower. So it's been fun to watch and like stand outside and be like, it's so much warmer here than 2 miles north. This is so geeky and awesome.
Yeah, because it's just like right over Norman. It's just
It's just sitting there.
Yeah.
It's like
that
a
river.
nightmare.
The river stopped it.
Yeah, but they stopped tornadoes too, I understand. So.
Absolutely. The mighty Canadian river that you could step across very easily most days.
No, I saw somebody put a Mesonet map up on Twitter. I'm thinking, man, that thing is like right over Oklahoma City. And I saw with the airport, I think they got down to like 47, didn't they? Will Rogers.
It came through a little bit faster than most of us were thinking, and I think even the really short-term, high-resolution models were off on it too. So,
I saw a tweet. So, who works the Twitter account in Norman when you're not there? I guess it just kind of rotates.
Whoever. I mean, all the forecasters have responsibility for it. Just depends on who's working what desk. But yeah, there should be always somebody there doing it. Thank goodness I'm not doing it all.
I saw a tweet about it's coming in a little quicker than we thought.
Yeah.
Shallow fronts are challenging. Often the highest grid resolution model we have, they just don't get it. And I have been burned many a time down here with that. And when they sit over the metro, it's so stinking frustrating. I mean, it's like, and my little world, all these graphics we have to use for television, they've got one little box for one number. And goodness, how many times is one number not working? So, and of course, we use maps that have different cities and it shows everything, but still, at the end of the weather, which is what most people watch, all those little boxes, one number will fit in there for a low tonight, a high tomorrow, and then for 7 days. And sometimes one number just does not tell the story at all.
Yeah.
But let's get the let's get the TV on here, and we'll get started. We should be hitting like right now, as a matter of fact. Well, hello, welcome to our TV friends. It is now 30 minutes after the hour. This is WeatherBrains. We have not really said anything radically obnoxious on the pre-show here. I guess we're running out of. Aubrey, got anything obnoxious you want to say? Any rants? Now hold it. Let's hold it for the show. Let's hold it for the show.
I'm going to do some thinking. I'm going to tap into my inner Kevin Selly.
Oh,
yeah.
boy.
See if I can channel up a good rant.
Yeah. So here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains episode number 631. If you've never been here before, WeatherBrains is the weekly show that's all about weather, atmospheric science, meteorology. We talk weather here. Thanks a lot for taking the time to join us. Most of you are listening to the podcast version. Some of you are watching the YouTube replay. Some of you are watching live. Whatever, we're just glad you're here. And this is going to be one of these fun shows to this week because it's just us. Rick Smith, just us little nobodies. We're going to talk among ourselves tonight. Occasionally we have these no guest shows. Tonight it's a no guest show. So we're going to just drill each other and ask them hard questions. How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing good. Yeah. I just keep changing out of a jacket and then I put the t-shirt on and it's just, I'm wearing myself out this afternoon trying to figure out what to wear.
Yeah. You and Kim are like right on this front. And now, Kim, you were mostly in the warmer air today, right?
I was sitting just a couple miles south of the cold front when it did hit the Norman Mesonet Tower. I'm just south and east of that. So we were keeping a little bit warm. It did come through, but then it went north again. So Rick and I are sort of on opposite sides of town. I think the west side where you are, Rick, got more of the cold air than I did.
Yeah, I'm up about a mile northwest of the Mesonet site and on Northwest Norman. So yeah, we got it. We got it a little bit sooner, but it's waffling back to the north now, it looks like.
Yeah, we had that down here. We had a few days ago, we had one reporting station to the north of me had 47, one to the south had 82, same kind of thing. And it makes it a challenge. Aubrey, what you got going? You got cold air damming. What's your situation up there?
No, actually, we eroded. Richmond had some cold air damming today, and east of the Blue Ridge, which is unusual. Usually, we are the suckers with the cold air, but we eroded the clouds, and I think that warm front just pushed a little bit more to the east. So we got up into the upper 50s today, and so my low is forecast here in about 2 hours. We're at 53, and then we will be in the 70s the next 2 days. Easily shattering. Our record high on Wednesday is 71, and we forecast 78.
Yeah, we're just going to, like I say, this is going to be a loose show here. If you like an organized show, you won't like this one. We're just going to ratchet jaw here for a while, which can be good because I would tell you along the way we will talk about some important stuff, I promise. But let's talk about this high amplitude thing here. You know, this happens from time to time. It's kind of an omega type deal, but it's all blocked up. So you got this big trough in the west and a big ridge in the east. And watching the video coming from the western states, we're almost laughing at them. I don't know if you guys saw the snow down in Flagstaff today, Arizona, and snow in Denver, and snow in Wyoming and Montana. I saw some thunder, some convective snow in Colorado today. So they're dealing with that, while those of us on the eastern side are dealing with the record warmth. We had a few spots in my state today that hit the big 80. Wow. And but what I want to do here, I'm going to poll all of us here, and I want you to tell me your thoughts on the spring tornado season. Now, Aubrey, you are in a part of the world that is not quite as tornado prone.
No, we are not. We have.
You know, you can have severe weather there.
We can. And, April is actually statistically our month of tornadoes. If we were to get them, that's when we have the most records in. So, kind of typically in the northern states, you get them a little later into the season, even kind of toward early summer. So if you kind of look at even some of the numbers kind of were progged for maybe more of a June outbreak, but actually our numbers correspond more to April, kind of a typical severe setup. But we have not recorded a tornado since that horrible outbreak in 2011. We've had a couple warnings and we had a cold air funnel, but that was it. So, it's interesting. And I remember, James, for the last couple of years, I have heard you say, not sure about this tornado season. I'm not liking what I'm seeing. So I've heard you say that the last couple of years. So it'll be interesting to see. But I don't know how I really feel about it. I guess I don't, because I don't live in such a severe weather market. I am somewhat unfamiliar with some of the maybe more precursors that
to me, I think of derecho when I think of your market, one of those big things blowing down from the northwest. I mean, you've had a few of those over the years.
Yeah, we definitely get our share of severe thunderstorms, and it's got to be just the right kind of atmosphere because of the mountains. And when you get, a bit of a lack of humidity in the valley, that's what can really kind of diminish some of these storms and really weaken some of these storms. But you know what? Even though we had the big derecho in 2012, last March, we had this major windstorm March 1st, and it blew through in about 20 minutes. And we had an unofficial station actually in my small town just outside of Harrisonburg, where I live, of 97 miles an hour straight line winds. And it took down a lot of trees, and we kind of went back and looked at the damage, and it was very isolated, but we did have that big windstorm on March 1st. So, and that might've been the most severe weather I saw last year.
So and again, I want to talk about coverage and how we communicate risk communication. That's going to be a big part of this show tonight, because I have a lot of questions, because you three are extremely smart. But I want to finish this concept of what's the spring tornado season going to be like. So, Rick Smith, you are the official WCM on the show here. What are your thoughts for the spring of 2018?
Well, that's one of the most popular questions this time of year from everybody, and it's always tough to say. Just informal discussions and thinking around the office and around the building a little bit. I mean, we're in such a drought right now, and we really Western Oklahoma into Central Oklahoma, the drought just keeps getting worse and worse. We've had a very dry winter time, very dry January, February. This moisture that we're getting now and hope to get over the next 2 or 3 days is the best we've had. And for some places, it's been almost 4 months since they've had appreciable rain. So a lot of times when we have that type of setup, we see the dry line kind of forming or being further east than it was. Like last year, for example, we had a different situation. The dry line would set up very frequently in the eastern Texas Panhandle, far western Oklahoma, and that's a big player in our severe weather here. Obviously, a mechanism to help the storms get going. But we've seen in these drought years, sometimes it's further east, and sometimes it's just west of Kimmel, like this, the I-35 corridor, or out to the west of Oklahoma City, and that causes the storms uncomfortably to form much closer to the high population areas here along Interstate 35. And sometimes we see them just forming east of the interstate, and then they're Tulsa's problem. So hard to say, but we're always ready no matter what. Our office issued our first severe thunderstorm warning of the year was today. And coincidentally, it was exactly the same date as it was last year. Last year, we issued 923. So it just stands to reason that we're going to issue 922 more. No, I don't know. Science, but no, I don't know. There's mixed signals. And I'm never really big on trying to nail it down. People around here will try to say, well, we're going to have above normal number of tornadoes. And, the line, especially out when doing public outreach and education, is, well, I don't care how many we have. It only takes one. So how's that for not
Kim,
an answer?
That's a good no answer. Kim, what's your good no answer?
Yeah, he gave a great no answer. I think following on from that, it really does just take one. We've seen that in other years where there weren't necessarily a lot of tornadoes, but a couple significant ones. And I'm thinking this year, going into this season, about it being the 5-year anniversary of the 2013 tornadoes in central Oklahoma. So I think that will, that anniversary may awaken for some, sort of the memories of what was a pretty traumatic year for a lot of folks in central Oklahoma. And Rick and I have both been starting to talk with some of the broadcast community here about what the population should be thinking about going into this storm season, one of the really big messages that some of the folks are trying to get out is you can be very safe in your home. And I'm very glad to see that message is something that they're seeking. And this is the time to be thinking about it. So while we might not be able to pin down exactly how many tornadoes there are going to be, like Rick said, it only takes one or two significant ones, and your family needs to be prepared, and you need to be thinking about it. Now is the time to have that plan in mind.
So, and I totally agree. And I want to talk about communicating risk and communicating severe weather information prior to an event, during an event, maybe after the event. And I just want to talk to Aubrey for just a minute. Aubrey, you don't have that many tornadoes, but let's say by chance it's a May day and you've got a tornado warning for a county in your DMA. How do you handle that?
Well, my first priority is to get on the air as soon as possible. And as social media has kind of evolved, and you got to think, I might do 1 or 2 tornado warnings a year. 1 or 2 a year. That's not a lot, and that's not a lot of practice. So for me, in the off season, it's important for me to practice, and also practice with my other meteorologists and with our directors. So we're not caught off guard, because we just don't see it happen as often here. So we have a lot of stuff built into the rundown. If I think there's going to be a severe weather day, I'll talk to the directors and make sure, like, hey, this is what I want to do. Either I'm by myself or I have someone else, so I can be visible. And we have it set up so I can be, or any one of our meteorologists can be visible along with the weather maps for most of the time. So we have our graphics set up like that. So it's a matter of, 1, getting on the air as soon as possible. 2, getting closed captioning, because we have to have closed captioning. So usually delegating that to someone. And 3, it might just be at this point setting up a Facebook Live and just going with it and saying, hey, there's a tornado warning. I'm going to hop on the air. You just listen, because if you're in this area, you're in this warning also, and kind of almost do both at the same time.
Well, again, that's the way that it should be done. But what I want to do, I want us all to just think about what we're doing. I'm old as dirt. I've been doing this for what year is this? 2018. I'm coming up on like 40 years. And old people tend to get set in their ways because they think they've had all this experience and they've done all these events and they know better than everybody else. And again, I don't think that way. I think we've got to make some fairly significant changes to the things that we're doing to be effective risk communicators. And Kim, this will kind of open the door for us briefly to mention a newer organization that will hopefully bring different disciplines together to provide some answers. What I have learned, Kim, is that I can't do this on my own. My background is physical science. That's it. And I was an engineering major for a few years, but I can't do this on my own. Our goal is to mitigate the loss of life involving preparation, warning, and response. And there's so much I have to learn. And I've got to surround myself with people smarter than me, and not only are physical science people, but they're involved in these other disciplines. So, Kim, just kind of explain what the Alliance for Integrative Approaches to Extreme Environmental Events is, for those that have not heard of this. And I had to practice for an hour or two to say that without stumbling.
Yeah, I'm very impressed. Great job. I actually, before heading into describing exactly what the Alliance is and how it sprang up, I do want to say it's as valuable for the research folks to be around you too. And this weekend, James and I got the chance to be part of a search committee for some important positions in the Alliance. And so we were in Dallas doing interviews for that. And just our round the table conversations, most of the other people on the committee have an academic background, and hearing James, you interject, this is what I deal with day in and day out, brought some really important questions to the table for the researchers. And I think that's part of what the Alliance is all about. It's about bringing together the academic communities that maybe don't talk to each other, and the practitioner communities that maybe don't talk with the academics of these various stripes, and trying to draw on the knowledge everybody has and the issues, the problems that everybody is facing, and to try to create solutions to make for a more resilient country. The way that this organization sprang up was it started sort of with a nudge from the National Weather Service, their Weather Ready Nation meetings. In the wake of the 2011 tornadoes, they kicked off some of these meetings, these initiatives, to try to bring social, scientific, and physical science voices together, because there was this recognition that those events they had such traumatizing consequences, but the physical science and the warnings were really pretty good. And that sent the meteorological community searching for answers in new places. And in that, they found the social science community. There had been a couple of these meetings, and eventually there was also a donor that came forward, a Canadian donor, came to the University of Oklahoma with a very generous gift. And he said, I've been following this trajectory. I think what you guys are onto is really great, really interesting. It sounds like you might need some support to build something new that doesn't exist now, that the federal government can't be the only thing responsible for doing this. And there's not a single private entity that can carry this all on their own shoulders. It sounds like we need to put resources forward to create something entirely new. And so we had a workshop to kind of talk about what might that look like, and the Alliance was born. So we still are sort of fishing for our exact, what exactly our function is going to be in our form, and the director that we're going to bring on is going to have a lot to do with it. But it's really challenging to try to make these bridges across disciplines and across our job titles. Everyone's busy, and we can't just all sit here and expect, you guys in broadcast to read 50 journal articles and absorb them and understand what they might mean for your practices. There needs to be, and likewise, the researchers, we can't expect them to always be going out to you to understand what your challenges are, what you're dealing with, what the technologies are, all of the things that you deal with on your day-to-day. There need to be translators who work across these groups, and that's really the promise and hope of the Alliance.
I'll just kind of read the vision of the Alliance. It is a society safer from and more resilient to environmental extremes through innovative partnerships, transformative interdisciplinary research, and effective knowledge mobilization. And the mission is to serve as an organizing mechanism among a wide variety and array of sectors and stakeholders in facilitating rapid is a key word here, and sustained progress toward mitigating the societal impacts of extreme environmental events. And obviously in this roundtable, we're concerned about atmospheric events, but I think at some point it could become an all hazards type thing to include maybe geological events or things like this. But I am very excited because I think this is the first, and I know, Kim, I can just hear the eyes rolling. I know that when people roll their eyes, it doesn't make a noise. I can hear it when they hear, oh boy, it's another organization with some big name and the same people, and they're going to do the same thing, and they're going to sit around and talk in these tables and conferences, and nothing ever happens. But I believe that this is actually going to be an organization that makes the difference. It is a missing piece of the puzzle that I have needed for 40 years. I can't hang out at OU, and I can't hang out at NSSL. I can't hang out at UAH or Mississippi State or Florida State and spend time with the academia guys. I don't have time to do that. And like Kim says, I don't have time to read journals. Now, when I was younger, I did. I grew up at night reading AMS preprints from people like Al Mohler and Chuck Doswell. Those guys are my heroes. And but today it's different. People don't understand. Aubrey, when people think of what we do, they think we work 8 minutes a day.
Right.
They think we're on television for 2 minutes at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock. They work 8 minutes. But these guys have the greatest job in the world. Explain it's not that way.
It's not that way. And, I was actually going home the other night, and kind of one of our anchors was celebrating 30 years. And I thought, God, I cannot be here for 30 years. And, and I kind of was thinking, one day, maybe as much as I love weather, there is that point where in this career, it's just the field where weather doesn't stop. There's no stop point. There's no end of the day. It does not stop, even on the quiet days. And I don't know if I'll ever get to that point where I can actually clock out and not think or worry about it. And I don't think I'll actually ever even get to that point, even after I leave TV, eventually down the road. So it's one of those things where, one, it doesn't stop, even on your day off. It's consuming you. It's your focus. And there's a million things running through your mind, when you're not just looking at the models and your guidance and your forecasting. What if this happens? What if this happens? I got to keep an eye on this. Did I talk about this tonight? Did I communicate this well? How could I have better communicated that? Did I get all of the information that I needed to do? Oh, let me check social media. Got to check my email. Got to get back to this person. It's like there's a million things just running through your mind constantly of, how can I best communicate this? How can I best share this information? How can I, what is the best way to show how this setup is going to be? And what's the most important thing that people need to know right now and for this week? So there's a lot just not just behind the scenes, but I think in your mind that people just don't understand, maybe when you're in this field, that kind of goes into all of that.
Right. And Rick, people at the Weather Service probably think you guys work for, maybe an hour a day. Got to put out a few products and services, but we work in a Weather Service shift. It is a whole different game now than it was 20 years ago.
Oh, it is. Yeah. Our job has changed dramatically just in the past few years with social media and increased attention to things like NWS chat. And it's just like you guys, we don't get extra people. They don't say, oh, we've got Twitter now, so here's 2 extra forecasters or 2 extra staff members. It's just, you do what you can with what you got. And Weather Service typically does a really good job of that. But yeah, I think that I talk to people on tours that some of them seem surprised when I say that we're here 24 hours a day, 7 days of the week, at least 2 people on shift. And, I think they have this vision that there's a fire pole somewhere that we slide down when we see clouds on the horizon. And there's a lot more that goes into it than a lot of people think. And although Kim and I talked to a TV meteorologist was it last week? Yeah, I guess it was last week. And just hearing and I've heard this from lots and lots of people, just hearing the extra workload that you guys have. I mean, you really are never off, and you really are, weather doesn't stop and you guys don't really stop. At least, I get to come home and we have rotating shifts and people are there doing Facebook and Twitter and everything else that the office does. It's not just, a one-man show. So yeah, it's a lot different than it used to be.
And listen, we're saying this not to invoke for anybody to feel sorry for us. I love what I do. I for all of us, we cannot wait to come to work every day. That's the way I still feel at this right age. We're blessed. We're doing what we love to do. It's marvelous. But the point, Kim, is what I'm trying to say here. I don't have time to read, AMS journal reports, research reports. I don't. And yet things come up where I really need some help. And the Alliance will be this new organization that will be able to help me. It's a one-stop shop, whether you need an engineer, an economist, or a mathematician or whatever, somebody from academia. They're all in this one place, not physically in one place. This will be a fairly dispersed organization, but yet it's all going to be there. And I think there's so much we need to learn. And Kim, I think my problem for many of us, we know there's issues. I know we've got issues. And then we start to draw our own conclusions without underlying facts to prove our own little conclusions that we just draw up walking down the road. And what this organization will do, Kim, is to help quantify our needs and what we need to do to change. And if we think we need to make a change, is it the right change? And that's what's exciting to me. This is finally going to get us some good information from all these disciplines and move us in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you just highlighted is something I know academics really struggle with, who are working in this space where, like I've talked about on previous shows, in the social sciences, for some problems that you're worried about, we're still in sort of the diagnosis phase. And we haven't really identified treatments, and we haven't done the work to show, well, what will fix your problem, but we can work with you to try to make those solutions if we know about each other, right? So In the social sciences, there's sort of this leeriness right now without something like the Alliance. We can go out and we'll highlight, maybe one study points to something being potentially a good idea, but there's so much hunger in the meteorological community for change that people sometimes pick that up off the shelf and then go and implement it before we've really tested and tried out, will this really help your problem? So something like the Alliance would come along and would help bring us through all of those steps and would help advise us and say, the research in this area is really strong. You're ready to go. Like, here's some off-the-shelf things that you can do right now. And it would also help to pair you, like you were just talking about, sort of the speed dating with the right researchers. Here are the folks who can help you start to get into that problem and find some solutions. And that they're going to do a good job, and it'll be something that we can give to the whole community. So it's not just something that's a local solution in one spot. It could be something that we could, transfer up a pipeline and maybe create a more national or even international solution for a problem. So thinking much bigger than we're thinking now, where everything is very, because we're all so busy, everything's what's right in front of us. I'm trying to take that and make it a bigger impact for what everybody's doing. Just have it be more impactful, more organized, and get us in the right direction.
I can't tell you how much I enjoyed, out of the time we spent in Dallas, the session on Sunday morning, because we accomplished our goal. We got the job done that we were called to do. We just started to talk, and it was a very diverse group in that room. You had some people from academia. You had some researchers. You had I'm the practitioner. I'm the operational guy in that room. You had an economist. It was just such a diverse group. And as we started to talk, the questions we were asking and things I learned in 1 hour that I should have known 30 years ago, but I didn't. And I didn't know some of this research even exists. And I just see this, once this organization is built, it's going to be this big resource in the sky that we've all needed. And maybe it's going to be something that unifies us. And as it gets more challenging for all of us, we're all busy. Weather doesn't stop. Social media doesn't stop. There's no such thing as shifts anymore. We're just on all the time. As we have less and less time to go through continuing education, we can get that through the Alliance. And it's this big resource and relationships that are going to be built there between these disciplines. It's going to bond some people together that should have been bonded together a long time ago. And I know the AMS and the NWA, they try and do this at their meetings and conferences, but having this thing there 24/7, I think is going to be really good. And hopefully, Kim, it will be up and running and launched later this year. Sooner than later.
Absolutely. That's definitely the hope. And, we have reason to believe that it may start, hit the ground running. So we launched officially at AMS a year ago. I know there are some folks, even the folks who did hear about it. And I know that that's a small, actually probably small group of people who knew that this was coming before we started talking about it. But for those who were aware, even, they're kind of like, okay, you guys, is this rolling? And people should know it is. And it's really to the exciting point now. So hopefully very soon we'll actually have something that people can start plugging into.
And for now, if you'd like to learn more, there's a fairly simple site up online where you can learn more about the genesis of this and where we stand now and the leadership and where it's going. It's alliance.ou.edu. And that's going to be my pick of the week. alliance.ou.edu. And again, we'll be talking about this more as time rolls along. But let's talk about the warning process. Rick, I like to ask these kind of questions, and I'm going to start with you because you're a smart guy. If you could change one thing about the way warnings are communicated to the public now, whether weather service, broadcast, whatever, what would you change?
Gosh, that's a very...
See, I love to ask these kind of questions, and I know there's maybe more than one thing you'd like to change, but forget, regional headquarters, forget Maryland, forget you're just dreaming here. Or let me just, or maybe an area where you think we need to improve and you have ideas. What would you change or what would you do?
There's probably several answers I could give, but the word, when you mention the word communicate, that's that's where it gets complicated, because there's things I might want to change, but the things that I think are problems, or the things that I wish I could wave a magic wand and fix, are not anything that we can necessarily fix exclusively in our office, or even working with the TV people. It's what people are doing with the information, the other side of communication, getting it, receiving it, understanding it, believing it, and all of that. You know, I think I think the science is pretty good now. I think we're pretty good at detecting most tornadoes, for example, and not all of them, but certainly the most significant ones are usually usually have warnings. I guess one thing, I just wish there was a better way to communicate and for people to understand that these storms are not always black and white. It's not always, well, it's either a severe thunderstorm or it's a tornado. You've got to pick one, because a large percentage of the time it's both of those. It's neither one of those. It's somewhere in the middle. And there's a lot of, you know, whether you do it with probabilities or how you do it. But I think a lot of times the warning process and the information that we're trying to convey is much more complex than just saying a binary severe or tornado warning. It's, as you know from doing this for a long time, there's storms where it's just, well, the tornado potential is very, very low, but it's not zero. Do we want communities firing off sirens and for hundreds of thousands of people for a very, very low tornado probability? I mean, this is kind of this. It's not something I can point to and say, fix this and everything would be better. But that's a big thing to me. Is just, you know, we just don't have a good way to communicate all the nuances, and I don't know if we even need to. And why I said it was such a tough question is, for us to communicate it, people have to be able to understand it and get it, and that's a whole other issue.
All right, and again, what facets is a topic for another day. That's the I'd look up, be sure I knew what facets stands for. It's forecasting a continuum of environmental threats, and that's the next generation warning system. And we'll talk about that on another show. I'm talking about the current warning system, and I totally agree. But I want to throw out some radical thoughts here, and I want to hear what Kim and Aubrey's on the air now, but both of you, what you have to say about this. And again, don't look. Let's be honest. There's no hurt feelings here. You guys can't hurt my feelings. My feelings haven't existed in 30 years. When you do this as long as I have, you have no feelings. Are we on television too much? Are we doing too much wall-to-wall coverage, Kim, in your opinion, based on what you've heard?
Man, that is such an...
Do we need to scale it back? Are people being lulled to sleep by so much weather coverage?
That is such an interesting question. I think to some degree, when it's continuous, you're actually probably effectively increasing the lead time that folks have for storms when they're downstream. They're able to be watching you, and it might mean that the boundary of what the warning means, the official lead time we offer, might not be as meaningful. If you're doing wall to wall, then they don't necessarily need that warning the same way to make that decision, to be that decision point. They might have started their preparatory and response actions before that point. And that's something that I've certainly seen in some of my case study work with your big event on April 27th. There were folks who were looking and watching for hours, and it was helpful in some ways. In some ways, they also maybe lose that, oh, this is the warning time. This is when I need to do a thing. So there could be some trade-offs to that. I think this is where the facets paradigm that you mentioned is going to go. If we're giving a continuous flow of information, will that continue to challenge what a warning provides and what it means? So I think part of it is you could be offering something really helpful, but there's also a really interesting effect that I think we're starting to pick up in some of our research, some of our data for rural areas that are east of the metro. They may not get as much coverage as others. And so they may get sort of unseen. Their damage may be not as well known and not as well publicized, either during a live event or afterwards when the recovery really needs some community support. What we're starting to see is that those events aren't getting incorporated into the social fabric in quite the same way. And people then sort of feel like the perception of risk is actually lower for those areas. So I think there's some interesting case to be made that maybe there ought to be more wall-to-wall coverage. And this is a pressure you all feel from, I'm sure, all of the production side stuff on your end. When something leaves the major metro area and moves off into a rural part of your viewing area where there aren't as many people, there you've had wall-to-wall coverage all day. I'm sure that there's a lot of pressure to cut it some. So I think the answer to your question to me is kind of complicated. If anything, I might err on the side of even more.
Yeah, I think, again, this is what I need to hear because, again, I come to all of you when I ask these questions without any claim to know the right answer. You know, it's just the way we've always done it to me is not working anymore. So some change. And we make a very stern parts in the metro. Most markets, they're going to stay with that damage. If there's damage in the big city, they put the helicopter on it, they put the reporters on it, they go to these live shots, and they ignore life-threatening weather that's downstream east of the big cities, and they don't get the coverage that they deserve. And I do my best not to let that happen here. I mean, I hear them screaming in my ear, we got this incredible damage, we got this live shot. And I understand that television is visual. I understand if they do have compelling video, they want to get it on the air. But if nothing else, split screen the thing. I'm not going to stop. You got to get a hook and physically yank me off that wall, because if there's a tornado 70 miles east of here, what's the difference? They need the coverage just like everybody else. So I do agree we have to stay with it for the entire time while we're on the air. But let's talk about call to action statements, Rick. That's been a little inconsistent in your market, and I know you can't, and I'm not asking you to comment on television. And for Kim, I'll ask you this too. Do we need to make any changes in the way we're doing call to action statements, Rick? What do you think?
I think we're in a better place now than we were 5 years ago at this time. Specifically in our area, I know that's something we talk about a lot. We're having a media workshop for our office next week, and that's one of the topics we're going to talk about is messaging and tornado safety guidelines and calls to action and things like that. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold and my voice is kind of going in and out, so I may have to start writing things on paper here. But I think it's better than it used to be. I mean, we've had issues here before. Everybody knows about the issues, and I really wish we could just let that stuff be dead and gone and buried and just move forward, because it does no good to dwell on the past and keep talking about the things that were done back in the past. But I think we're better now. We've had discussions with all the TV stations here about what advice do we give people. I seriously don't think you're going to hear. I'll be surprised if you hear anyone in this market say, you're going to die if you're not below ground. I think we've all pretty much agreed that is counterproductive potentially, and really does not convey does not give people practical, actionable advice that they can act on to protect their lives. So we're not perfect, and there's going to be slip ups and things are going to happen. And that's just how it's going to be. But I think we're much better off speaking up for us here locally than we were 5 years ago.
And Kim, we had a fascinating discussion yesterday morning about a FEMA piece of work involving natural disasters and what we need to do. When is that going to be released to the world? Do we know a time on that?
That's a great question. So what James is talking about is this really thorough report, stunningly thorough, that has been spearheaded by FEMA has an individual and community preparedness division. And this led by this woman, Jackie Snelling, who has gone to every agency, every journal, looked at every epidemiological study to see what are the protective actions for every single hazard that actually improve people's outcomes the most. And she's getting down to the kinds of nitty gritty stuff that, we sometimes take for granted, things like the recommendation for parents to put helmets on their children. This is covered in the report. And she's going to highlight how strong the evidence is for these various protective measures, whether you should go into your innermost room or your bathroom in your house from a tornado, how helpful that is. If you are in a mobile home, whether you should get in your car. There are some studies for this. And I think that coming out, hopefully it should be the next couple months. As I understand it, it's in one of the final stages of review. So it's gone through a sort of academic review, and now they're sending it out to agency partners and getting comments. So hopefully the next couple of months. I know FEMA, the preparedness month, isn't that next month? Isn't March preparedness month?
I don't know. Our severe weather preparedness stuff's right now. I don't know about FEMA. Rick, do you know?
Okay.
Well, I know they do a month in September.
That's true. Yeah, that was September.
Regional severe weather preparation things that are going on the next couple of months. So
yeah. So I'm not sure if they might coincide the release of that report with some sort of key month like that. I hope it wouldn't be September before this comes out. I know she's really pressing to get it done. It's like I said, incredibly thorough, but I think one of the things that it poses a challenge for us in call to action statements, you all during events, you all are communicating to this mass audience. This report is going to outline for you, here are like 18 different categories of people and circumstances where here's the different protective actions that ought to be taken for these different circumstances. How do you all think is best to utilize that? I don't think that it's really tenable to have that list of 18 things in a warning. We have the call to action statements at the bottom of the warnings, and I don't think that that's the place maybe for those. What do you guys think might be the right spot for knowledge like that to go out through your channels?
Well, Rick, in my opinion, that's something you do, prior to, you do it this week. This is Severe Weather Awareness Week here where I am. And that's something you push this week, and of course, all through the year, but especially this week. If you're trying to reach different people groups with different situations, and there's 63 different rules, you somehow get that in their hands on weeks like this. You can't push that out on TV when there's a tornado. I mean, you just can't run through 63 rules. If you're over here, you do this, or if you can't do that. It's on television. It's got to be short and simple and to the point. But that's the kind of stuff you push out in advance. Rick, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you gotta beat people over the head with that in the this time of year, but especially when we get into a period of severe weather and maybe the days before and the hours before. Often I'll hear people say, well, there's a moderate risk tomorrow. What does that mean? What am I supposed to do with that? Or I'm in a tornado watch and it's clear blue sky. What am I supposed to be doing in a tornado watch? So I think we need to do a better job of getting that information out there during that time when people can actually be planning and thinking. Putting that stuff in a warning, that's useless. I mean, it's too late at that point especially in our warnings. It's not too late for the TV people to be giving advice as long as you possibly can. I mean, people can use that down to the last second. But I think as far as getting people ready in advance, we have to do it routinely. We have to do it often, and you have to say it 100 times more than you think you need to say it, because people are not going to remember and grasp it.
Right. And that's why I'm in schools every day. I mean, I will be today. I was not in school today because it's holiday, but tomorrow I'll be back in school. I'll be back in school Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. And I try and drill it into these kids' head. And if you can reach the kids, you tend to reach the adults, the rest of the families that way. So that I agree. You drill this in their mind every day when you're out in these school programs doing these outreach events. But out of these many items, Kim, I think there might be some interesting findings and that we might hear where we have been maybe telling people or withholding ideas or not sharing things that I think we're going to maybe see some surprising points in this big paper.
Yeah. And I don't want to, before it's published, I don't want to,
Yeah, we're not going to give anything away here.
The surprise, and offer something that doesn't end up becoming a recommendation. But some of the things that we discussed they're at least discussed in the report, I can say fairly, are things that are controversial, like the recommendation to get in your car if you have no other place of refuge instead of getting in a ditch. This is actually something that, based on some research that was done a couple of years ago, the American Red Cross has already sort of jumped the shark on this, and they issued recommendations to folks. If you're in a newer car, they say or if you have a newer car, it's better for you to get in that rather than evacuate your mobile home and get in a ditch, because the thought is the airbags could deploy. There's that sort of steel frame, if you're buckled in, that can protect you, especially from rolling. If you become airborne, well, you were probably in a bad situation with a very bad tornado in a ditch too. So it's something where you're looking at the choice between a couple hard options. And I think something like that might actually be very challenging if that's something to come out as a recommendation from FEMA. This very authoritative work that's going to be published. I think that's something that might be really challenging to message, because we've so messaged, we don't want you getting in your cars. And if you're in a mobile home, we really need you to get to a better place of safety, and we encourage a better structure. And we don't want to encourage folks to be driving during this time when there's a tornado imminent. So I think that there's a challenge in maybe trying to make sure we don't have mixed messages going out as we're thinking about all of these different folks who face these different circumstances. And that's going to be our next bridge that we need to cross after this comes out, is thinking about, okay, so how do we message this now? And for the things that are controversial, is our community ready to accept them?
Yeah, all these years, and my standard line is: a car is a death trap during a tornado. A mobile home is a death trap during a tornado. Marvelous to get you to work, marvelous affordable housing. I'm all for mobile homes. In many communities where a lot of low-income families are in place, they're a godsend. But yet during a tornado, you got to get out. So all of a sudden, here we are. And we're not saying this will be in that report. We don't know. Mm-hmm. But let's say if it is, if you are in a mobile home and if you do not have time to get to a site-built structure or a shelter, get in your car. Like you say, Kim, there's a lot of challenges there. My fear is that, Joe Q Public's going to hear that, and maybe they're in a site-built house, and they just James Spann said, go get in the car. And I'm going to go sit in my car and they get injured, or the thing goes airborne or something. There's going to be some real challenges with that. But at the same time, Kim and Rick, we have to be open to change, right? To be successful, to move forward, because I don't know anybody that's happy where we are in terms of the warning process. And if we're going to get better, we have to be willing to change.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know, Rick, you undoubtedly have some strong feelings about this. I think one of the things that folks were saying this weekend was, no matter what's in this report, it's better than the nothing we have now, so you guys can actually have something to lean on to make some choices.
Right. And I've said this many times, Rick, it doesn't matter what your opinion or my opinion is. We care about facts, and that's what this is.
Exactly. And it may be that, whatever this list or whatever it looks like when we get it and it comes out, it may be that we're not messaging that constantly all the time. I mean, what I try to do when I'm doing safety talks is to give people the general principles of tornado safety. What's the goal? Well, your goal is to get out of the way of the flying and falling debris. How do you do that? Well, we use a get in, get down, cover up, kind of our version of stop, drop, and roll. And trying to get away from this. If you're in a mobile home, do this. If you're in an apartment building, do this. If you're in a movie theater, do this. People can't process all that. But it will be awesome to have more ways to answer those questions than we have now. I mean, the number one question I get at any public-oriented safety talk is, okay, what do I do if I'm in my car and there's a tornado? And I have a slide that says, the answer is, are you ready for the answer? Here's what will keep you safe. Don't be in your car if there's a tornado. And nobody likes that. Like, well, what if we are, though? But what if we are? And I'm like, well, don't be. Check your radar app, check the television, don't get on the road. And if you're on the road, get off the road and find shelter. But people are just, they are really hung up on that. And if you get in a situation where you have to make the choice between, okay, here comes the tornado. Do I stay in my car? Do I get in the ditch? Or do I get under the overpass? Or what do I do? People have survived doing all of those things. People have died doing all of those things. And there's no good option at that point. I can't tell you what to do.
Yeah, Rick, I'll tell you, when we were talking with that broadcaster last week, and he was trying to impress upon me, it's so hard for him to say, tell people what to do, because he feels that pressure of, well, people might find themselves in a bad spot, and who am I to tell them to stay? I just was thinking, and I wasn't going to say this wasn't on the talking points list, but when I was growing up, I was very nearly in an F4 tornado in the suburbs of Chicago, Joliet. I was signing up for some language classes. My mom had my brother, my baby sister, and we left this building. And I mean, it's one of my earliest, most intense memories. And the sky, the wind was so intense, we could barely open the car doors. And we were, the sky was just black. And we were trying to drive home. And as we were driving, we encountered hail, and then the sirens were going off. And it was 1 year after Plainfield, so the area was very sensitized to tornadoes after that event. And our family certainly was. And my mother was saying Hail Marys, and I didn't even know what that was. And she was just like, say it with me. And she was thinking, do I stop under this overpass? Do I stop at these random people's houses, or do I just try to make it home? And, in the early 90s, we didn't have any advanced technologies to look and see what was really happening and to know if we could make it back to Naperville, where we lived. And I'll tell you, as much as it sucked getting home and staying in that basement and listening to the radio and the reports and just waiting for something to hit us, it was so much worse being in that car and not being home yet. That was the worst feeling in the world. And it's hard to sit and to wait. It is so hard to sit and to wait. But we were so grateful when we reached home and we got in that basement. We were just grateful to have it. And I think anyone who's been in that situation, how terrible it feels to be in that car. You just do not want to be in that car. And that's something we're thinking about. You don't want to have that be in that moment, those be the choices that you're making.
Let me ask you too this, here we're trying to, it's getting a lot of attention, and I believe it to be a problem, but again, we're waiting on some firm research, but about maps, using maps. People can't find their home on a map. The Weather Service in Birmingham, in fact, as part of Severe Weather Awareness Week, did a big push in recent days, throwing out these blank maps and asking people, can you put a dot within 50 miles of your house? Do you know what county you're in? Do you know the adjacent counties? Kim, is that a real problem, or is that just an illusion? Where do we stand with that?
I guess it really depends on, how you define a problem. I know you and I have had.
Let me define it this way. So, and I'm talking mainly before an event, leading up to a big tornado day, not the day of when this tornado's down. I'm talking 3 days out. And SPC has thrown up a moderate risk 3 days out. And we're showing that on television and across social media and across all these outlets we have. And the reason I think there is a problem after you show these maps, which my opinion are easy to understand, the first question on Facebook is, what about East Aboga? What about Aniana? What about Andalusia? What about Opp? What about Clanton? What about it goes on and on and on. They demand to know about their town. And it is my opinion, after years of seeing this, is that they can't understand that map. They can't use it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. The pre-event stuff, I think, needs some more study. We really don't know what people are or aren't gleaning from that. I think what I found, and again, returning to the case study of your event, which, is it's a big event. And so it's really unique in some ways and not generalizable to everything. But you guys were hammering it so much for so many days ahead of time that most of the people that I spoke with, out of a pretty large sample for interviewing, were really aware that their area was in threat, potential threat. And so they were just sort of aware enough to be looking that day. And I think, there's something to, even if people don't know what exactly, like they can't locate their town within their county or even their county per se, they know that they're in your viewing area. And there is something to that. Your viewing area is probably going to have some pretty similar risk contours to it. I think, in Oklahoma, we can have some really specific situations set up where the western part of the viewing area is much more at risk than the eastern part. And I know that happens there too. But people, I think, will generally, push comes to shove, know if they're in the western part of your viewing area or the eastern, if they're near the big city or not, like have some relative references that they can use. So while, again, you know, they may not know exactly their county, and they may ask you this question, what about my specific town? It might just be that they're confirming. It might be that it's not that they don't necessarily have an idea, you know, for themselves, but that they want as much specificity as you can give. And that far out, we just can't give it. It's just a limitation of forecasting capability too. We shouldn't be telling you, you know, this particular town, unless you're 100% sure, you shouldn't be saying this particular town is out, you know, or it should just be a general, like, everyone should generally be aware in this area of what could occur on this day, and just keep their eyes open. I don't know. Those are my two thoughts. You and I've had some really great conversations about geography and people's awareness, their sort of spatial awareness. And I think from what I've seen in my work, people can make some pretty great inferences, and they want as much specificity as they can possibly get. They crave it. And they're probably seeking confirmation. That's been documented from other folks too, is we're just, when it comes to risk, we're like endlessly information seeking. So they probably are just trying to get something from you that you might not be able to even give at that stage.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think I'm sorry, James, go ahead.
I was going to say, does that happen to you?
Oh yeah, we get the whatabouts all the time. And I really don't think a lot of them, I don't think it's that they don't know where they are. I don't think it's that they don't know where Moore is in relation to Norman or in relation to Oklahoma City. I think that it is that confirmation. I think they just want to hear, okay, this is what I think. Is Moore really included? Or it may be that they're getting different messages from different sources, and one has their town in it, one has them not. So I just take it. I've become a lot more patient with the whatabouts, just because I don't know what their problem is, or what, you know, maybe they're just confirming. Maybe they just want to hear you say that yes or no, you think my community is at risk.
Mm-hmm.
How do we handle that? I mean, and here's my problem. I really work hard in responding to everybody. If they come to me with a question, I really try and answer. I'm honored. Out of all of the professional meteorologists in the world, they chose me. But after you get 150 of these whatabouts, it's like Lucille Ball in the candy machine. You can't. What are we supposed to do about that?
That's a good question. I'm like you. I try to be as patient and responsive as possible, but after a while, you just can. And eventually, like on Facebook, the other Facebook fans will just take over and say, look at the map, you idiot. They put a map on there. Can't you just look at it? Which I'm not endorsing calling anyone an idiot, but you know how people on Facebook are. But they'll take over.
Mean.
Yeah. It gets into this nasty name calling, cussing. You idiot. Can't you read that map he just put on here? And it really degenerates quickly. But I hate the fact that I don't get in there and I don't respond. I just can't. After a while, I can't. It doesn't do any good.
I don't know. And you do a great job of this. The TV stations do a great job of this. And we're trying, just give them a map, give it to them as many different ways as you can. Here's a map. Here's the county lines. Here's the county names. Here's the interstates. You can only put so much on there, but, and you can only hold people's hands so much. And, to give them at least the graphics and the information. We can't list every single community. If you start trying to list every community that's included in a risk area, you're going to leave somebody out. Well, what about this little ghost town that doesn't exist that me and my family know it used to be there, but nobody else does?
And no one would read that list. No one would ever read that list. You'd lose everyone.
You're still going to get the whatabouts even then. So there's no answer.
And Kim, if you could gather everybody in the United States, every television meteorologist in the country in one room, you've got us together, and we ask you what do we need to do to change to get better with severe weather coverage? How would you answer that?
That's a great question. I think I would turn to your communities, and I would say we need to ask them, ask the folks in your community, see if they feel like there are urban and rural biases in coverage, see if they feel that they can understand the mapped references, or if they need some more geographic markers on some of these broad scale maps. I think that there's opportunities to learn just from the folks that you're serving, and there might be some really local kinds of issues or questions. Again, just thinking like the medical doctor approach to this, the diagnosis. I'm not sure for a given market what your issues really are, and it could be really different place to place. So that would be a recommendation: is listen to your communities and try to fish out from them what issues might be.
Let me drill down some more. I know we did a poor job of reaching certain people groups during some of these big events. Low-income families, Hispanics, teenagers. What are your thoughts on reaching specific people groups that we just can't hit well during traditional television coverage? What do we need to do beyond where we are now?
That is so the question. I think we're starting to learn that the mass communication has, there's some people who do really, really well, and just getting more technology out there is just only still reaching the same people and not changing their position very much. Who we really need to be reaching are the less reached and the vulnerable. And so thinking that in that frame changes everything. I think that it really varies. So in the Oklahoma City broadcast market, for example, we learned that a lot of the Spanish-speaking population, because Telemundo had been losing funding, Telemundo got rid of their actual meteorologists, and the folks who were Spanish-speaking or non-native English speakers, they would switch during severe weather from Telemundo to the English stations because they had all this sort of whiz-bang technology, and that helped the broadcasters to know, oh goodness, there's an onus on me to make sure that what I'm saying, there are visuals that can translate across the languages, that I'm saying enough through pictures and icons that it's not only my words. And I don't think that we're fully there in reaching that community yet. I think we've really just done a good job identifying that need, and that's a continuing need in this area. It's a tough one. There are some folks in the Weather Service who started to work with deaf and hard of hearing populations. I know my best friend from home was deaf, and living with her was so eye-opening. When severe weather would happen, we'd hear sirens, for example, and everyone around her would start freaking out, and she would have no idea what was going on, and she would just look around and be afraid because everyone was doing something, and she'd have no idea what it was she needed to do. And when watching TV, oh my gosh, the translation to text is so bad. Even still, if you were to mute the television and try to just watch that and try to figure out if you're a deaf person, how do you make sense of this? It's just awful. So there are some basic things we can be thinking about to reach some of these populations, just that are sort of technological, visual. When words are a problem, when words fail, or translation to text fails, what can we be saying through our images that syncs the message home, or through our other written graphics and things?
Yep. Well, again, there's just so much to talk about and so many things we have to do to get better, but I think we made some progress, and we got a long way to go, but we're going to get there. But that's why I'm excited about the Alliance, and that we'll finally have some facts. We'll have under one roof, if you will, maybe a virtual roof, but it's there, all of these different disciplines, and we need to pick up the phone and call somebody or go to the website and get some information. We can do that to help us make decisions, because we still have to get better. That's the one thing we have to do every time. We have to review every event. That's the one thing I will do. I don't like to watch myself on television, but I will go back and watch video of the last tornado outbreak, watch myself, and try and review what I did right and what I did wrong, and come up with the system. I'm a systemic kind of guy where the wrong stuff doesn't happen again. But we could talk about this for a long time, but I see Aubrey's back. So let's stop for a moment here. And I would imagine just maybe there might be a little email in that bag, which means I got to play some email music, and we'll see what's in the old WeatherBrains inbox this week.
Letters. We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
Yes, we do have some letters, and let me shimmy on over to the email box. Robert Keel. Hey there, WeatherBrains. Don't know if this is in the works, but if you do another market focus show, maybe you can talk with some Tulsa colleagues. I know we've had James Adelot on, or 80, is it Adelot? How you pronounce it?
I see James tweets all the time. What is it, Rick?
It's ate a lot.
Ate a lot. Okay.
Ate a lot.
Like you ate a lot at a restaurant.
Ate a lot. From Fox 23 and Steve from past shows, but also trying to get on Dan of KTUL, Mike Collier, Travis Meyer, or any of the other meteorologists on their respective staff. So thank you, Robert. We will pass this along to Mr. Bill Murray, who is off the show right now for tonight. Along with Brian.
But it was 50-cent beer night at Hooters, so that's the reason he's not here.
Oh, that's why. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Glad we've got we can track him down. Let's see. This one is from Brian, a longtime listener, first time emailer. So thank you for sending this in, Brian, from Pasadena, Maryland, on my side of the East Coast. One of the frequent discussions that you have regarding the use of Facebook is the fact that severe weather alerts will appear hours after the fact. For those of you who have Facebook pages, have you considered using the stop newsfeed distribution option when you post something on the page? You have the option to click stop newsfeed distribution box and set the time at which a post will stop appearing in newsfeed. Seems like it may be a solution. And Kevin wrote back, great suggestion. Apparently Kevin did not know. I knew about it, but I forget about it when I'm writing. I'm usually typing so fast and just send it and don't even think about it. Kevin said he's used time deletion on posts before, but it's obviously frustrating that we have to take extra steps because of the limitations that Facebook places on an already bad system. And then we also have from Ellie Morrison, from our Canadian friend. This one is just open to just about anyone to answer because it could use perspective from TV, NWS, and social science. Currently and historically, a catalyst for interrupting programming on the air is a tornado warning for some place in your viewing area. However, the weather-related fatalities chart produced by NWS shows that flooding and extreme heat are ranked very close to tornadoes. So then why is programming not interrupted for flash flood warnings or extreme heat? And a note that Canada is also way behind on this. They have a ready alert system, a computerized crawl, and a voice that will cut in, and that's it. I know at my station, when I started, we did used to cut in for flash flood warnings, for severe thunderstorm warnings, and for tornado warnings until the severe thunderstorm warnings just got too much to cut in for all of them. And now we kind of use it as our discretion. Obviously, if we see something like a derecho approaching or a particularly severe thunderstorm, we'll cut in, or a dangerous flash flooding situation, which I know I did last year when we had over 3 inches of rain in a short amount of time, and cutting in for flash flood warnings. So
yeah, I was going to say the same thing. You have to take every situation and make a decision. Everything is different. Not every severe thunderstorm warning is the same. Not every flash flood warning is the same. Not every tornado warning is the same. And I have done a lot of wall-to-wall with flash flooding events here over the years, but not every time. And I have done some wall-to-wall with severe thunderstorm warnings, not every time. When it comes to drought and extreme heat, that's obviously a long-term situation that you just deal with, preferably before it happens. And when it's happening, you can remind people. And again, you know the deal. If you listen to this show, we despise those stupid heat tips where you tell people to go into an air-conditioned room. But there are some practical points that do need to be made during heat waves. But that's a long-term problem. And if we went wall-to-wall for heat waves where I am, we'd be on TV for 40 consecutive days without programming. And they would fire me and there'd be nobody left. So there.
All right, so that's what I have. So if you have an email, go ahead and send it to us, email@weatherbrains.com. Love to hear your guest suggestions, your show topics, an idea that you have, or even, what you like, what you don't like about the show. And some of you guys even send us some great links. So go ahead and keep sending those, email@weatherbrains.com. You can also find us on the Twitter and the Facebook.
On the Twitter,
like Facebook, but we do it.
No, Brian Peters is on vacation this week, but Tony Rice is working hard. Here's the astronomy report. We're going to come back with the picks of the week and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook. A year ago today, the Stratospheric Aerosol and Gas Experiment 3, or SAGE 3, was launched aboard a SpaceX Falcon 9 bound for the International Space Station. The SAGE program began back in the 1970s, was developed and tested at the NASA Research Center in Hampton, Virginia. This remote sensing instrument studies the composition of the atmosphere, specifically the ozone layer and aerosols from the troposphere through the stratosphere. These measurements are made through occultation, or looking at the light from the sun or moon as it passes through the atmosphere at the edge or limb of the planet. The space station provides a unique vantage point from which to take these measurements. Recently, NASA's Atmospheric Science Data Center publicly released data collected from June through August of last year, including measurements of ozone, aerosols, and nitrogen dioxide. Marley Roel, SAGE 3 science manager, said, "The instrument, coupled with model results, will allow scientists to monitor the health of the ozone layer and track recovery of the stratospheric ozone since ratification of the Montreal Protocol. By the 2020s, in most areas, models predict that ozone will have recovered about half of the amount lost prior to 1980. Elsewhere in the sky, look for the winter hexagon, one of the largest asterisms or patterns of stars in the sky other than those official constellations. To find the winter hexagon, start with Rigel in Orion's right foot. From there, move clockwise to brilliant Sirius in Canis Major, then on to Procyon in the fainter constellation Canis Minor, then on to Gemini's twins, Castor and Pollux, and then on to Capella in a lesser-known constellation, Auriga, and then on to Aldebaran in Taurus, before you finally make it back to Rigel. Each of these stars are bright and stand out from the others around them, forming a rough hexagon. That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
And goodness, Aubrey, we've got some audio from our buddy Tarmo we forgot. How could we forget Tarmo?
Yes.
So from across the pond, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to hear the guy talk. This is Tarmo Tanelsu with a little email message to us, so roll it.
Hello, WeatherBrains. This is Tarmo Tanelsu from Laguja, Estonia. You know, out here in the West, we are kind of taking for granted that we have access to some sort of radar imagery, but this is not the case everywhere in the world. Over the past week, the State Weather Service in Saudi Arabia has earned quite a bit of scorn from local weather enthusiasts after they decided to block radar images from public view. That initially affected their Arabic language website, but has since extended also to the English version. Now, they put out a statement on 15th of February, that's Thursday, and that basically was a very planned statement, just saying that this apparently had been in effect from what I take was from last November, given that the date seemed more like Gregorian one rather than the Hijri one. And, well, that statement really seemed to set the weather enthusiasts in the country off. The statement also said that, well, we have had 400 users who have signed up to this service now, and, well, a lot of just spin, and the weather Twitter appears to be having none of it, at least those that I have kept my eye on over the recent times. Not quite sure what they are trying to accomplish with that. The neighbors provide radar images. Oman does, Qatar does, UAE does, Kuwait does, even Iran does, and Israel does. Now, Israeli radar, of course, doesn't extend into Saudi Arabia, but that's the point some have made over there, that how come Israel is providing radar data to the people without any registrations or anything, while their own government, while the Saudi government doesn't. So that, not quite sure what they're really thinking with it. Maybe they are trying to crack down on the social meteorologists or something else, but this has definitely brought quite a bit of scorn on the powers that be. And I guess we'll see how that will pan out. Even if this blockade was already in effect for a while, well, it's really has cotton on the radar, pun intended, with the recent active weather. There have even been thunderstorms in the country recently. So, not all is bad news. So basically, I have also some good news, namely here from Europe. Two countries, Germany and Netherlands, are pretty much putting out of radar data through their open data outputs. In Germany, basically you can get about 10 elevations, and that will include reflectivity and radial velocities. In Netherlands, you can get entire volumes and also all products. So if you know the format, you can play around with them, and I have already done. I've been over the past few weeks, I've implemented support for both countries in my radar viewer that I've been doing in Python over the years. So some good news also from Europe. And this severe weather season is definitely promising to be a pretty interesting one. That's it for now. Over here, we're expecting, by the way, some bitterly cold temperatures, them just into negative Fahrenheit are possible in the coming days. And I wouldn't rule that out at all, since we are starting to gradually approach sunset over here as I'm recording this, and the sky is rather clear. From Lago Estonia, this was Tarmo Danilso on Twitter at ES5NHC.
We just like to hear the guy talk. How many shows, all these podcasts have a guy from Estonia on there. So there you go. All right. And by the way, I wanted to mention this before we do picks of the week very quickly. And Rick probably can't say a word, but all the news sites are reporting Trump administration proposes slashing National Weather Service budget by 8%, eliminating hundreds of jobs. So Rick, can you hear us over there? You got any static coming in? Hello? No, can't hear a word. The budget calls for the elimination of 355 jobs, including 248 forecasting jobs. So the question is, will we ever have an MIC in Birmingham again?
I'm not going to comment much, but I will say that it's not unusual for the president's budget to have things in it like this that by the time the budget ever gets implemented down the road, it's usually much, much different. So there, of course, you can't say never, you can't say always, but I personally just don't get too excited about the at this stage.
Yeah, you're probably like me. There's a lot of things happening corporate level here in our world that I don't know. All I can do is do my job. I come to work, I do my job the best I can do every day, and there's some stuff I can't control. I don't worry about it, but that is obviously something to keep an eye on. But we got to do picks of the week here because I have to do television. So my pick, it is the Alliance site. We talked about the Alliance for Integrated Approaches to Extreme Environmental Events, and it's alliance.ou.edu. If you'd like to learn more about the organization, its mission, where it's going. It's kind of a basic site, but it's got some good stuff there. Rick, what happens to be your pick of the week this week?
My pick of the week is actually a new podcast that's just come online. It's the AMS has a podcast, and Dakota Smith and my mind just went blank. The other gentleman that is organizing. But anyway, the first 2 episodes just came online, and they're available in your favorite podcast source. Wherever you get WeatherBrains, you can probably get this AMS podcast. And I know I was lucky enough to be interviewed when we were in Austin for that. And I don't know how often it's going to be out, but I know they recorded a ton of great material at AMS, and I think it's going to be pretty good. So that's my pick of the week.
Awesome. So an AMS has a podcast now. And again, listen, this is a marvelous weather podcast. I mean, we joke around about it here, but we're coming up on this podcast month where we're going to kind of promote each other's shows, but there's a lot of really good content. If you like weather, used to be We Were It, and now there's a whole bunch of these things, and they're all very good. So we'll promote that, I think, next month. But let's go to Aubrey to see if she has the pick of the week.
My pick is a water spout on the Potomac River that happened, I can't remember when it happened. The other day, maybe Thursday or Friday, maybe Friday. It's a really cool video from the river, and it's actually just south of La Plata, Maryland, which if you're familiar with La Plata, Maryland, it's kind of the mini bullseye of Tornado Alley on the East Coast. They've had a couple of very violent tornadoes there kind of toward the Chesapeake Bay region where you have the Bay breeze and some different circulations there with the Potomac River and the bay and everything. So very interesting video.
Awesome. Kim, what you got for us this week?
I have, speaking of the preparedness division at FEMA and preparedness in general, this being a good time to be thinking about it. If you want an entree to the kinds of stuff that this division puts out, have I got a report for you. It's their sort of preparedness assessment of the country, and they break things down into several different divisions. But they talk about how prepared families across the country are. There are geographic breakdowns, demographic breakdowns. If you're interested in learning more about the preparedness status of your area, definitely give it a look and prepare yourself for the next FEMA report that's going to be coming out.
Yeah, how many pages will be in this FEMA report? I would assume hundreds.
It has some tables, it has some tables that still have hundreds of rows in them. So yeah, it's going to be a lot.
All right. Awesome. Late night reading material. So again, I hate to do this, but we've got to wrap this thing up kind of on time this week. So thanks to all for being here. I love these homegrown shows, but if you want to send us an email, the email address here, it's email@weatherbrains.com. All of the show notes on the website, weatherbrains.com. Our social media accounts are there as well. And hey, if you listen on iTunes, leave us a review, good, bad, whatever. We just love those things. So thanks a lot for listening. We typically do the show Monday nights at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central. Many people watch at live.bigbrainsmedia.com, but we know that most of you listen. However you consume this, thanks for your time. We appreciate you being part of our family. And on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thanks for listening. Have a great week and God bless. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was fun.
All right. You'll have a lovely week. Bye.